Think about the physical act of watering a single, isolated marijuana plant growing securely inside a private home. The U.S. Constitution grants the federal government the power to regulate interstate commerce, but looking at this plant, it's hard to see how it involves either commerce or crossing a state line. In 1996, California voters approved the Compassionate Use Act. This state law removed criminal penalties for patients using marijuana for medical purposes, effectively setting up a collision course with federal authorities. Angel Reich was one of those patients. Operating entirely within California and strictly under her doctor's supervision, Reich cultivated and consumed marijuana in her own home to treat a myriad of serious medical conditions. But under the Controlled Substances Act, federal law still classified marijuana as an illegal drug. Federal agents raided Reich's home and seized her plants. Reich filed a lawsuit against the DEA and the U.S. Attorney General. Her argument was straightforward. Her actions were strictly personal, entirely local, and never entered any commercial market. This created a very distinct constitutional paradox. If Congress's regulatory power is legally confined to interstate commerce, it is exceptionally difficult to explain how they can assert jurisdiction over a private medical decision made in a California living room. Initially, the judicial system sided with the local grower. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of Reich, declaring that applying the Federal Controlled Substances Act to her specific situation was unconstitutional. The appeals court built their logic on two recent Supreme Court decisions, United States v. Lopez and United States v. Morrison. In both cases, the Supreme Court had struck down federal laws for stretching the definition of commerce too far. Applying the tests established in those precedents, the Ninth Circuit concluded that Reich's personal cultivation did not substantially affect interstate commerce. The lower court's ruling drew a rigid boundary. It established that there were, in fact, localized non-commercial activities that the federal government simply could not touch. But the federal government appealed, and the Supreme Court overturned the Ninth Circuit in a 6-3 decision favoring the Attorney General. Justice John Paul Stevens delivered the majority opinion. To legally connect Reich's localized actions to the national economy, Stevens had to zoom out. He utilized the class of activities doctrine. This principle dictates that the courts do not evaluate an isolated action on its own. Instead, they examine the entire category of behavior that the action belongs to. A massive interconnected web represents the national marijuana market, beside one tiny isolated node for Reich's home. Multiply her personal cultivation by thousands doing the exact same thing, and this local supply displaces demand, directly impacting national pricing. The court determined that because of this economic impact, regulating these small intrastate nodes is essential. If the federal government couldn't ban local possession, their ability to regulate the broader interstate market would fail entirely. Stevens resolved the paradox by aggregating the data. By shifting the legal focus from a single backyard to a nationwide class of activities, a private, non-commercial act was legally classified as a significant interstate economic force. The court explicitly separated the ruling in Gonzales V. Raich from the restrictions they had previously laid out in Lopez and Morrison. Those prior cases involved narrow statutes trying to regulate single, non-economic behaviors, like carrying a handgun near a school. The Controlled Substances Act, by contrast, is a comprehensive economic regulatory scheme built to control an entire commercial market. The immediate result for citizens was absolute clarity regarding jurisdiction. A state law legalizing medical marijuana offers zero constitutional protection against federal prosecution. Fast forward to the present day. Dozens of states have passed their own laws legalizing marijuana. Yet, under the authority of held in Gonzales V. Raich, the federal shadow remains intact. Marijuana is still a Schedule I controlled substance at the national level. Beyond drug enforcement, the decision solidified the Commerce Clause as an incredibly potent tool for establishing federal supremacy over state laws. Under this precedent, if a local activity, no matter how small, can be shown to aggregate and eventually ripple into the national economy, the federal government possesses the constitutional power to control it.